Hey everybody, Scott back in Houston, Katy, Texas, doing Southern style. So got a patch right here, just going to show you what I think is the easiest way. As a professional, this is how we do it. You got a stud right here that this box is on, so they just had this electrician cut in, and he didn't cut it this straight, we did. But so we've already pre-cut. So this top is 12 inches. We cut just a 1 by 14 inches. So we're just going to set this in the center and add a couple screws top and bottom. So this will avoid you cutting to the next stud that should be 16 on center, but a lot of times in Houston it's 24. So we do this to avoid cutting it that big. So just hold that board nice and flush on here. Right inside the level of the drywall. So all you got to do, we'll put a couple on top and bottom. Same here, just hold your back. We'll put 4 total. It's not going anywhere. So we've already pre-cut the sheetrock. So we're just gonna stick this in here. We notched out for this box here. And you can try your sheet before. Make sure you got a nice tight fit. And same thing, we'll go top. You don't wanna push too hard because you don't wanna push that board out. So let the screw kind of pull as you're holding. Make sure you get inside the level of the drywall. We'll do the same thing on the bottom. And then for good measure, we'll put a couple in the center. So there you go. So we pre-cut, we put that 14 inch, this is roughly 12 inches, I cut 14 inches, so you got about 2 inches of wood, top and bottom, and this thing is now solid. So we'll mix some mud and we'll cut the video, we'll come back and we'll show you how we finish this thing up. Alright, so we're back. I mixed up some plaster. I got another video you can go back on how to mix plaster. It's Soquete mud. I do about 70-30, 60-40, 40% plaster, 60% regular mud, and 7 to 10 minutes this thing will be hard. So scrape your patch, make sure you don't have anything in your way. Figuratively speaking, we would call this a butt joint. If you have your sheets, it's an 8-foot room, so regular hung where the 2 4-foot sides come together is called a butt joint. So we always tape those first. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of mud, 1/2 a 6 I call it. So tools you need, pan, knife, 6. Don't listen to these guys online about hawks and trowels because nobody really uses that. So this is my absolute favorite tape. It's called fiber tape, fiber fuse. And I've been doing this for 29 years, almost 29 years. And this tape is phenomenal. It can't blister. It's very easy, and if you do have a little bit of mud and not enough like regular tape, it'll blister. This won't blister. You can actually put mud through it once it's on there. So we'll apply a little mud on these 2 top seams, like so. And my fiber tape. So another thing I wanted to say too, also on a patch like this, there is a stud here, so you can cut back to here where you have wood on both sides, but this one was so narrow, it didn't really need wood on both sides, so that's why we were able to put just a piece down the center. But if it gets a little bit wider, you might want to cut back center to the studs and or put a piece of wood on both sides. So now we're taped, and as you can see, just the tape coat, you can see how smooth this is. With regular paper tape, you're not going to get that. It's going to be rippled. You have indentions coming in and out. So I'm just going to apply some mud, probably 2 to 3 inches past the tape line all the way around. The patch was fairly flat, so we don't really have to bust it out too far, is the whole point of us just putting wood rather than cutting it back. So we'll fill it in real good. And then feather edge. So again, do this on a lot of my videos, but just the top 2 or 3 inches of your 6, and you're just going to lay that edge inside your mud line all the way around. it there, all the way down. So now I've got my 12. Same thing, I'm gonna put my pressure on this outside, and it's called floating because we're floating over it. So as you can see, I'm edgeless there. I'm gonna just come one more time. Put a little more mud here. So I left a lap mark here, if you can see that or not. And then, so once this plaster sets up, I'll do in a lot of my videos, I'll show y'all how to rake this out and get it clean enough for a little tight skim and a texture. This is a medium orange peel, so I'm gonna show y'all another trick, which I've done on my video for a knockdown to match this texture, because the cans work well for a light orange peel, but for this heavy orange peel, I'm gonna show y'all a trick here shortly, as soon as we come back. All right, so we're back. It's 7-8 minutes. And I've got a couple videos. This is why we use this plaster, because I mean it locks up. When it locks up, it locks up. So the good thing about plaster is it doesn't shrink. In any one of these demonstrations that I do, you can use regular mud, but you obviously have to wait and let it dry completely. So as professionals, we try to get it done and get out of here. So as you can see, I left my lap mark here. Got a little bit of pit holes and stuff, but you raise that knife up and do what I call raking. So essentially what I'm doing is sanding, or what the effects of sanding would be if this was a dry patch of regular mud. And so everything that I rake off, I'm just going to touch up and re-spot until I get everything nice and level. So with the plaster, this avoids us sanding. And obviously, you know, you've got 3 coats you need to tape: a float and a skim. So we already taped and floated. With plaster, it doesn't shrink up as much, so I can use regular mud, a little tight skim of regular mud. So this is +3 that I got in my pan. You don't want to mix the old plaster with the new mud, then you get trash. But I'm going to stay inside this line, which I've done a couple demonstrations of already. So I'm going to stay about a ½ inch inside that line. Because this mud's wet and this plaster is dry. Because we need to sponge that edge, and you can't sponge the wet mud without leaving lines. So I'm going to stay right inside that line, my plaster line, and do what I call an inside skim. Now for a heavier texture that's really bumpy and your knife is bouncing as you're wiping it, you have to do what's called an outside skim with the regular mud, and then you got to let that tack up for maybe 5 minutes or so, where you can sponge the outside of the, if it's a heavier texture. This is a medium orange peel, but if you get like a heavy knockdown or any kind of brush finish or anything that there's a lot of bumps in your mud because you can't level it out with your knife, do an outside skim about 2 inches or so. Let that mud tack up for a little while, and then you'll sponge your edges. So we'll wipe this down nice and clean. Like so. So as you can see, there's no blemishes. This white outline is the plaster. So I'm going to take my sponge, just a side of the sponge, a regular grout sponge or whatever, we use it for drywall, and I'm just going to blend that edge. So again, this is how you do it professionally to get it done in one setting. If you're using regular mud, obviously you have to let it dry. You can still apply the sponge if it's regular mud, but you're better off. Right there so I can show them the difference. You're better off sanding. So you can see the difference between an unsponged and then a sponged edge. So we'll get all these edges done. So I use, this is an orange peel. I do several demonstrations on a light orange peel, one of my favorite textures. But this is a heavier orange peel. So if you use that Homex can on this, it's going to shrink up so much that it's not going to be protrusive and you're not going to see it. So we're going to use a trick, what I call a flicker brush. So I got just a medium mud. It's, you know, not quite paint, but a little bit thicker than that. So for a lighter orange peel, you can use this brush. You can see the bristles are really, really small. And you use it the same way that I'm about to show you with the red and white brush. These are a little bit bigger, so you'll get a little bit bigger balls, so to speak. So we'll just dip in, and then I'll flick off so there's not a lot on there. And then, so the idea is I'm going to flick and I'm going to push my left hand at the same time. You just use your fingertips. So it'll take a few rounds. You want to try your best to get it even. But as you can see, the balls are pretty big. And this is just regular mud. It's just +3 mud that I mixed in a bucket. But it's not going to shrink up as much as that Homex can, because that Homex can, it gets flat when it dries. But if you do that on this, once you paint it, you'll see it. So this is a little trick to avoid breaking out the hopper. And it's just an eyeball. Get it nice and full. So it's not a knockdown. You can look at my other video about how to fix corner bead. And we did this with thicker mud and then let it set up and we knocked it down. But this is a medium orange peel. So all we're gonna do is get that texture as accurate as we can by hand. And then you just let it dry and paint. We'll fill in a little bit there. And there it is. So obviously everything needs to dry completely prior to painting. And this will be a little bit messy, so you got to make sure you cover up. As you can see, we got the floor covered up. So there it is in a nutshell. As you can see, you can't see the edge. The texture is nice and full. It'll shrink up some. If you get any kind of outskirts like that, you can just damp it with a sponge. Let it dry and it's over with. So I'm going to do a couple more videos here shortly. We're in process of hitting that 1,000 mark to get monetized. Please subscribe. If you have any problems, questions, anything you'd like me to demonstrate, you can get in my email. Doing it Southern style.